because so much believability will come out of what's really there.
It doesn't matter what it is. If we do something in our movies, we make sure that it's correct, that it's right, and it's something that will stand out.
You'll hear that? How'd you like to come and see the world with me?
You made it?
Yeah.
All right.
When we first knew that London was going to be the location, we went on a research trip there.
Tokyo, Japan is really one of the most amazing places on the planet. Causally, we thought just put an R in there and it's causally perfect.
Every science fiction movie that features a robot, open your head, pour it all in, mix around, there's your research.
We took a trip down to JPL in Pasadena. Just do some, generic, let's scope out what they're doing, just see the rovers, see all these other robotic programs under development down there. We went in there and thought everything was beautiful. Everything was milled out of aluminum, and just see the mill marks on them, see the welds and the beautiful craft that went into these robots. I mean, that's what I came away with.
There's a sense you get just as a human by going somewhere and smelling and feeling and being there that you could never get in a book or a movie.
You got to smell it, you got to taste it, you got to be there to get the realness of it.
Beyond all the amazing things we saw and the photographs and the detail that we were able to observe and hopefully capture in the film, we had experienced this amazing place, seen things no one's ever seen, and in doing so, it was really kind of a wild adventure for us.
Everything felt alive, like the clouds were always kind of boiling and the sun was coming through and you'd be driving along and suddenly shafts of light coming down on a cottage in a field, and it just felt very kinetic.
Do we need to take 12 artists across the pond and around the country? And what we've learned is not only do you need to, it's critical. Get over here. So, I am the producer of Brave. Was the producer of Brave. It's over now. And I'm here to facilitate today's panel. And I think we've got some exciting guests, and I'm going to introduce them to you now. Starting with Andrew Stanton. He is the director of Also joining us is Lindsay Collins. She is the producer of Finding Dory and a co-producer on Wall-E. Please also welcome Jonas Rivera, producer of Up, the producer of 2015's Inside Out. And we also have with us today Pete Doctor. Unfortunately, he will not be allowed to speak, but he's here to look good. He is the director of Monsters Incorporated, Up, and the upcoming Inside Out. And finally, Denise Ream. She's producer of Cars 2 and the upcoming The Good Dinosaur, which comes out in summer 2014. So, I think among my colleagues here, we've all done our fair share of research, some of us more than others, but we all have stories to tell. We'll try to get through as much as we can. Pete, why don't you start off? Let me start with you now that you've untaped your mouth and are free to speak. Why not just go on the internet? Why do you really need to go to all these places?
Well, I mean, on Up, we started actually with a fantasy place that Carl went to. And then we realized, okay, the story is about how Carl worries that he missed out on real adventure by just staying home in this little town. We need to take him on, like, the ultimate adventure. And so we just started looking all around the world for places that would represent that. And we found these amazing, I'd never even heard of these tucuis in South America. All the photographs we could find were kind of fuzzy about what kind of plants and the details that we really needed to capture. So as we were looking in the art department about how to do this, we were lacking. And we realized this place is so weird that if we just made it up, it wouldn't feel authentic. So we had to go there.
Remember, we kept calling it Patuis for months.
Patuis.
The biggest thing that came out of it was really pronunciation. So Lindsay, you're a producer on Finding Dory. These films take 4 or 5 years to make. When does research happen? Have you done any for this new film?
We have, and we've actually done quite a bit. You know, it actually kind of spans because it depends on what we're looking for and who needs to be there. I think initially what we're doing is looking for the art department, thinking about worlds and sets and environments, and then as we get a little bit farther into production, such that the characters are getting designed, often we'll have a whole nother trip that's going to be much more relevant to the characters of the world. And then once the animators come on, they actually want to go out and study movement, and a lot of times, depending on what you're doing, movement can be very specific and direct to the actual character that you're designing. For instance, they can go look at fish and how fish move. Or sometimes they're going to have to go and figure out, I think we went for Wall-E, I think they went and visited a sea lion, believe it or not, park to see how the humans, the large humans who had forgotten how to walk and such, would move and have their bones. So sometimes the research actually seems like it's, why would they go look at sea lions if they're going to be making a movie about robots? But so sometimes it doesn't make a lot of sense. But it spans, I would say, probably the first 2 or 3 years of production. We're doing massive research trips for various things.
Yeah, I think actually on Brave we took 2 trips because we had story artists on the first one, and they were meeting with, locals and learning the accents and the rhythm of the language and doing all this folklore research. And then a year later we went back with the art department and they were, zeroing in on the microscopic cells of a leaf and squeezing moss. I think, different interests. So Andrew, you didn't rely on diver footage and cameras. You got certified. How'd that work out for you?
That was a near drowning experience. The interesting thing about Nemo was that when we started research on it, it was 1999, and it was to search stuff on the internet was still new, and it felt like cheating. And I remember, I would talk to Ralph Eggleston, who was our production designer, coming on early, and I said, I know I've written a script, but I haven't gone to any of these places. I've just been looking on the internet. And I thought, if anybody finds out, it's going to be this big sacrilege. And now it's like common. It's like everybody's encyclopedia.
Right.
But at that time, it was kind of weird. Now it seemed like it wasn't like okay, it wasn't sanctioned yet to do that. And then we looked at tons of National Geographic footage, because here's these people that have spent their lives and years doing all this stuff to like go underwater and get the most gorgeous footage. We're never going to be able to match that, so we sort of became authorities on that. But it was John that eventually said, yeah, that all does something to a point, but it gets to a glass ceiling. And then you got to just know what it feels like to be underwater. So there was a ton of us that had not been certified. We sort of did it as one big group. We're from Northern California, we're up in the Bay Area, so we went to Monterey, California to get certified. And I really don't recommend that. It's cold. It's cold and it's murky. And it was funny, there was all these divers out there. You have to take classes for weeks, anybody that's done this, and then you take pool certification. Then you can finally do the day of diving. And off this beach, there must have been at least 50, 60 people out there all, doing their thing. And we're all intimidated. Our class of about 10 or 12 of us put on our suits. It's hard enough just to walk down with all this weight on you, get into the beach, wade into the water. And as you swim out there, and you're already, your blood pressure's way up, it suddenly dawns on you that everybody out there are not professionals. They just looked at because they were already out there. They're all getting certified too. And it's basically just about 100 people trying not to drown. And so you're just like, get away from me, like swim away. And other people are grasping, like, it's horrible. It's a horrible scene. And then you have to do this thing where you have to go down a weighted rope and just wait until the instructor's going to go down the road and like give you signals to take off your mask, put your mask back on, and all stuff. And you go, okay, it's like, I don't know, 12 feet wide. You go under, in Monterey, like, you can't see a hand in front of your face. So now you're just like in nothing but sand, and you're just waiting there, and you're just like, this is not worth it, I'm going to change my occupation. Like, you're thinking everything out. And then suddenly, boom, this guy just shows up out of the sand in front of you and gives you your instructions. I think they filmed us like just crawling on our hands and knees, crying like babies, just coming out of the ocean. So I told anybody that had to get certified after that, like, go to Hawaii or go to San Diego and like have a boy with a drink at the end of the boat.
Great, so I think
don't suffer again.
we're all
when you were talking, like, if you look on the internet, go to National Geographic, you are looking at someone else's interpretation of reality. And what the audience wants to see on the screen is your interpretation.
What was great about doing it as a group, and I'm sure you have on these subjects, is that you're all collectively making the movie. So when you sit there, you can even say, I can't tell what's wrong, but we all feel something's off. It's like you're all chefs and you go, something tastes off. And it's always that intangible sixth sense thing that you couldn't have had you not all experienced it.
I like this joke because we show these videos and it's all very glamorous and all these great places to go, but the truth is 90% of it is the lamest, most boring stuff. I mean, I worked on a bug site, but I remember the first piece of reference and research I got to do was John Lasseter's assistant. I was in the art department with Catherine Calls because as John was driving out, he saw some really great mud in the driveway. I ran out with the camera and took these pictures of mud, and then I remember calling out at Disney. They were working on Milan at the time, so we just got back from our research trip in China. I was in the driveway, taking pictures of mud. And I made it. That's a bulk of it.
Yeah. Jonas and I were like right out of film school, and they're like, oh, we need reference from this. Rosie, the spider's gonna spin this web. And so Jonas and I were like, oh, this is our big moment, right? So we were out in the Pixar backyard in Richmond, California, literally spraying silly string and a camera, and videotaping silly string and a camera. So we're excited that we moved into international trips now. It took a while. But yeah, the sizzle, the reel you saw, when we started this presentation, it makes it look so smooth and amazing. And really, I think, Jonas, you're one who can probably speak to the dark side of these trips. From the producer's perspective, like from packing the first aid kit to being just responsible for everybody there, and anticipating everything that can go wrong, what is scary and daunting about trying to take your coworkers out of town like this?
Well,
mean, obviously on Up, we planned this massive trip. I didn't go on the trip to send you guys to the buoys. I'm no dummy. I was going to climb that mountain. And the State Department involved. We got all these clearances. We had to get helicopters to take you guys up there. My favorite imagery was of the first. We do a lot of. We photograph everything we do. We document. We have this DVD crew that shoots footage of us prepping the film. So hopefully someday it's relevant. We show it. The very first thing we shot on Up was Pete and the art department getting shots.
Oh yeah.
From nurses, one of our conference rooms, so they could go to Venezuela, miserable, hating it. But there's that trip. I was sending you basically the most dangerous city in the world. You flew into Caracas.
Yeah. We went to dinner. We stayed in this hotel. They said it's the most dangerous city in the world just for crime. And so we go to the hotel. They're like, "You want to go to dinner?" Okay. We get in the car. It goes literally 2 houses down. We get out. We go to dinner. We get back in the car. It goes in reverse 2 houses back.
Yeah.
They just didn't want us to walk down the street even 2 houses. That was way more dangerous than the nature of
that was before getting to the buoy. They get up to these buoys, and I mean, these places are as isolated as it looked in the film. And there was no communication, no phones, and we got somehow you got a hold of your wife because the storm had come and trapped half the group at the top. I mean, I don't know how I'm going to try to explain this. There's nothing I can do. I'm in Pixar, and I don't know did the other half get down.
Yeah, we got down.
Brother-in-law was part of the group that didn't get down.
So there was a storm coming in, and
families involved now.
Helicopter pilot was like, "We can't go again. We're going to have to stay up there." Luckily, we were with this guy who planned for just this sort of thing. But the thing that is deceiving about the film is, on this particular buoy, there was no flat surface. Every square inch was like this weird bumpy rock. So if those guys had to sleep up there, it would be in pouring rain.
Here's some context. The helicopter pilot, remember this?
Yeah.
This guy was taking the teams up these mountains and down, and he'd done this for years. He worked. Adrian Ward was this great National Geographic archaeologist, photographer that was the host and arranged the trip. And the helicopter pilot that worked for him, we had to pay, eventually quit. And he said it was too dangerous.
Yeah.
And his new job, I kid you not, what he told us was he was going to Baghdad and picking up down power lines. Safer, I said, doctor was we made it, it's in the movie, it's all good. But it's not always very
We climbed, the first one that we went up for Rhino, we climbed up, and the guy and Adrian said we were like really nervous because, we're a bunch of out of shape animators who, like the most we exercise is to walk down the hall to the bathroom every day. So, is this going to be okay? And he says, yeah, no, it'll be fine. Most people make it up in about an hour and a half. Well, we made it up in 10. And we were planning on stopping to sketch, but we didn't have time. So that was a little rude awakening. Out of shape we all were.
Denise, you hit some international locations for Cars 2, Race Around the World. Can you talk about a highlight or a low light of that process?
Well, that was amazing. As I say, on that film, we pretty much had to build a world. I ended up missing a big chunk of the international trip because Up was premiering. So I think Germany and London, but I got to go to the Grand Prix at Monaco and the Fiat factory in Turin, which was amazing. But honestly, my favorite, very early on, there's a very famous car show at Pebble Beach called Concours d'Elegance, and I really didn't know what to expect. And it's on the, I think, 18th hole of Pebble Beach, and I sort of fell in love with cars, actually, at that car show. All of these beautiful vintage Italian, American, French, English cars just made me look at them as sort of works of art. And I'm the type of person that I barely know when I drive what it's called. And I think after that movie, I find myself really looking at car design in a whole different way. So that was pretty amazing. One of my favorite parts of that day, they have this tradition, it's called Dawn Patrol. And basically they drive all of the cars out on the 18th hole to park them. And it's really spectacular just to hear some of these cars are quite old, and just to hear the engines and see them drive out. It's really, really fun.
We we turned you into a car, you turned into a car person at that moment. I know, magical. I find that happy accidents happen on research trips, things you wouldn't expect, that can really help your story. So we were in Scotland for Brave, and we went to Scotland, really sure about what we wanted to do with the story, where the castle was, sort of the geography. We were looking to get inspired, artistically into really plus things. But we got there, so our castle was set on a high cliff and it was surrounded by land. We got to Scotland and we saw the Dynevor Castle. We visited it one day and it was, on the cliff, actually facing the sea. And that actually was a moment of inspiration for us. All of a sudden, whoa, the clans can come in by boat. It can be an outpost to the sea. This is the way people come in. It actually made sense to the story in a lot of ways. And in that moment, we decided we were going to go back to Emerville and change the whole layout of the land. And actually, it changed the story. It changed, the ending. To go away by boat, all that kind of stuff. But we had a lot of those kinds of things happen where we would think of ways the story was going to change directly as a result of something we saw in research. Any of you want to talk about anything that's happened in any of your films because of the research, directly informed what we saw on the screen? Inside secrets.
Yeah, with the Tepui thing, we climbed up, we're all dog tired, and we got to an overhang, this part of the cliff that they had set up tents for us, and it was just so beautiful. It's actually what inspired the scene where Carl and Russell are sitting under the house, because it just had this wonderful feel. Never planned for that. We were looking for plants and rock shapes and things like that, but you just never know what you'll find. The other thing I'll say is, we're doing a lot of talking about all these highfalutin fancy places. On Monsters, we went to a steel mill, which was really cool. We were trying to find blue collar. And this was right in our backyard in Oakland. We ended up getting a lot of great stuff, especially for the locker room Monsters Inc. Things, posted notes and weird signs that those guys had up. Just a feel of the place. You can find research. The research is not isolated to exotic travel around the world. It can be.
That's the sexiest part of the research is just what's the subject we needed to know about. We never talked about it for Brave. One of the earliest things we did is we got as many people to come together that worked at Pixar to talk about their mother and daughter relationship.
Yes.
Just to make sure that we weren't only telling, that we were more of an authority on all the different facets, because everybody has a different time. And so you can start this, it's like trying to do a control group, so you can just try to understand what were the common denominators, as opposed to the very specific ones that we were only hearing through certain situations. And then on Toy Story, we were our own research. It was just trying to go through, it was basically every day was just storytelling about what toys you played with and what incidences we did, and when we would go to Toys R Us, that was the most we did. But it wasn't like we were skimping, that's what we needed to capture.
Tell them, run, Joe, run, sorry.
Well, I thought this was common lore, so I'm sorry if you guys have heard this, but in my mind, the late Joe Ranft and I were what real boys were like with their toys. And so we were looked at for the Sid character. And in my mind, Andy in the movie is the freak. I don't know many boys that treated their toys that well and organized them like that. And it turns out that's John. That's how he grew up with his toys. And so it was, we would go, Joe and I would go off about all the different ways. I think it's because in our houses it was just brothers, and it was all the ways you could destroy it. For us, it was how soon does my toy break so that I can really get into it. And I had a friend, a latchkey friend, during my, formative toy playing years that had acres and acres of private land. And we just got into it. And all we cared about was our G.I. Joes would break them. We could really do some damage and do some torture. So I told him he had his own little cove too. We were in a coastal town, so the water would come in and come out of the tide. So we'd strap them to a rock and wait for the tide to come in and go, speak, you gotta tell us the secrets of the water. And we took one and I was telling John, we took an M80, we put it on its back, put it in a running pose, put it in the very center of the field, and said, run, Joe, run, blew up, and that became the common And I remember all of us had a couple dolls that we still had at home. We were all, everybody, whenever they went over Christmas, we would bring them in. And one of them, I had this really dates me from what I was talking about. I had a big Jim doll. Like you could press his back and his arm could go up and down. And he had to karate chop action. That's what it was sold in the box, karate chop action. And it had he had a secret decoder clamp that went on his wrist. And we were in the middle trying to figure out the middle of the story about how Buzz was going to find out that he's a toy. And we lifted up, there was a secret little plastic panel, and in it was the molding that said made in China. And that was when we sort of had this epiphany of that's how he could have a secret on him that he's never seen and find that out. And, you know, again, I would consider that was all research.
So what Andrew's saying, parents, if your kids are blowing up their toys, it's
all for them. Or furthering their future.
That's really funny too. We go on these trips. It's like, you know, we go places where they think, you know, they hear that we're coming. We kind of give them the gist of the story, and we think that what we're going to want to see is what most people want to see when they come visit whatever it is, the factory or an animal play, you know, an aquarium, something like that. And they're like, yeah, no, can we go see the back? And they're like, no, what do you mean? And they're like, no, under. Is there a way to get under the building? Can we get under the building? And they're like, they want to go, no, yes. Can we go to see the roof? We're going to see the roof. We're always seeing like a weird thing that nobody else wants to see.
You called in my brother, the architect. I don't know if you know the architect, because they all want to know what the heck does the underside of the house look like.
Yeah, we saw a house once in Berkeley being craned up for some work. It was over, and they were shot under, you know, piping and joists and so forth, and that became the model pattern for under Carl's house. So all these little things, you know, you kind of look around and observe, and that's really, I think, you know, the gist of it is, even though you're doing crazy things like houses that fly and so forth, you want them to be a certain amount of authenticity. The ostriches for us.
Yeah, it's always funny when we work sometimes too, and be like,
yeah, that not only was
like walking through the frame, it's like this enormous ostrich, and it's like, we have an ostrich here.
Well, the PR people too, I think that was the Ratatouille like press junket day. Coming out, we had 4 ostriches in a pen on the lawn with a sock on their head so that they wouldn't bite.
Yeah.
Since they're so dumb that they are scared of you if you come up to them, but if you grab them and put a sock on their head, you can touch them all you want.
You do the same to Pete.
There's obviously a team element. If you're traveling for research or if you're staying home, you know, Andrew, you mentioned that collectively making the movie, you know, that you're always aware of how collectively we're making the movie, and it's a hugely collaborative medium. But the team element, you know, I think has a better or worse side of it. I love bonding with our team, and in Scotland, you're at the very beginning of the process in our case, and we had, you know, then after that, 6 years to make this movie, and it had ups and downs. These are hard movies to make. We had, you know, certainly we had our troubles, we had good times and bad times, but that family, that core family that we created, you know, amongst ourselves in Scotland remained through the sort of thick and thin. And I love that. I love that collaboration. Sort of we can finish each other's sentences by the end of this journey. And we were a family. We're going to make Brave as a family. But of course, you know, families also get really sick of each other. And I think it was essentially a long road trip. We're on bumpy buses, and we started getting on each other's nerves as well. And if any of you are familiar with director Mark Andrews, he's extremely noisy, smelly, just very irritating.
But we love it.
We do. We love it. Like, why are we all on this bus together still? We're sort of almost ready to kill each other too. But that is family, and I wonder if anyone has had experiences with any of the downside of research that you can actually mention here.
I feel the same about the car. I was on the cars, one of the cars research trips. There's not a downside, but it was the same thing as sort of cementing that idea of family. We drove on Route 66 all the way from Kansas into New Mexico, and it really cemented the story team. And I went with Joe Rand and the story guys, and Mark Nielsen, and it was just one of those things I'll never forget. I loved it so much I flew my wife back so that we could finish.
Oh wow!
And I went the rest of the way, so I wanted to go all the way across it. And I remember Joe. One time when we were out in the middle of Arizona somewhere at this little mom and pop diner, it really felt like something out of the movie. He said, like, if we could just get 10% of the way this feels into the movie, we'll be great, because it was such a charming thing. Anyway, we
quite a bit. And then we went to Mark and Alice Davis's house. Of course, Mark, again, I don't need to tell you about Mark Davis. And Alice was showing us around, and one of her little dogs had an unfortunate accident in the basement. And one of our artists stepped in it and spread it all. So that was unfortunate.
That is the downside of research. That's what I'm saying. So that happened. So that happened.
That's not true. But Joe's house, and what was great about Joe's house, because he was, you know, he lived in the house how long?
It was almost like 50 years, I think.
I remember specifically you could see where he patterns on the carpet and the light switches.
Yeah.
He said, like, we have to get that into Carl's house. It has to feel like an entire lifetime. Elizabeth's house was such a great example.
I wanted to, I'm going to just give this group one more real topic, and then we're going to actually start asking, taking questions from the group if anyone would like to line up and prepare a question. We meet a lot of characters and people along the way as we're making these films, either locally, you know, we had the guy at the zoo who knew bears for Brave at the Oakland Zoo, or internationally, the fiddler who, you know, told us all these stories in this remote Scottish village. Was there anybody who directly inspired something in the film, or who really inspired a character along the way for any of you?
You go to a place expecting the place to be the inspiration, and you end up running into somebody, person, who inspires you just as much. I mentioned Joe and Mark and Alice, and then there's this guy Adrian, who Warren took us to movies, and he was just a wealth of knowledge, and his passion for the place and the information he gave us was, I think, almost more impactful than the visit. Pretty amazing.
You always end up getting, or you hope you do, that you're going to meet somebody that will become your hotline. Like, we had Andy Summers, the fabulous fish guy, we called him. He's called the bad fish guy. And when we meet the heat of it, we go, can an octopus do this? Can a seagull do that? And they either had the answer or they knew somebody that did, because they were in that community. And so we had a similar thing with the guy with space, with Wally. And that's when you're just like, it's gold, you know.
And so passionate too, such a part of it. But I think probably everybody had teachers at some point in your life that they would come alive and they talk about something that they were always in love with, and that just infuses everybody else with the same passion for it.
I found even our actors, part of our research, you know, along the way, you start looking particularly with a Scottish setting. We had a lot of Scottish actors, and we would write the script, you know, Americans in Emeryville trying to be all Scottish, and then, you know, we get to a recording session, and Emma Thompson would say, you know, she looked at the line, she's like, this is great, but, you know, a Scot would never say this. Well, why? You know, well, you know, or, I remember we used to have a line in the movie that was, Meredith was very angry with her mother, and, you know, Eleanor just gets extremely thick in her Scottish accent, and she's so angry, and so Meredith says to her mother, careful there, mother, your Scottish is showing. And we ended up changing the line, and Emma Thompson saw it, like, Scott would never say that. Scotch are extremely proud of their language, their culture. This is not something you would ever want to hide. You're not trying to act English. And we're like, you know, it just sort of changed the course of the way we thought about everything. And so sometimes you're doing, you know, right there on the stage in the moment, and you're rewriting pages in a recording session because of the wealth of knowledge that your voice actors also bring to their roles. And I think there was some of that on Ratatouille as well with any of their French speaking.
Yeah, there's a lot of cars too, some of the racers.
Yeah, I know that.
Racers really influenced a lot of cars too. And just, I was always amazed at just the car, I call them car savants, because they would just know the most arcane aspects. We were in an art review one day, and someone just started spouting off something about lung nuts, but it wasn't a lung nut, and just going on and on. And I remember some guy in the passing, and he just was spewing this. I mean, it's just such a passion, and you're like, gosh, I never knew so much to talk about.
I might have missed this, but I seem to remember Paul Newman on an early first recording session with John was talking about and defining what it was like to have to turn in dirt, and that's what started that whole story thinking. Cars, right? And it was this really eloquent, poetic speech that Paul Newman gave about that.
Yeah, that's right, the left to go right. Yeah. And he talked about what that really means. To break your rear.
You have to kind of be ready at honest, you're always changing the story. And every new piece of information you get, no matter whether it's something you were seeking or whether it's something that just fell in your lap, you move and adapt. I mean, that doesn't stop until the film's in the can.
I think that's what got us all into animation, really, is sitting, for me, it was like drawing on programs as I would sit in classical music concerts my parents would take us, and you're just watching and observing other people, and now those observations are what you put into the film and what people respond to, so it's like, essence of the films is research.
I mean, it's the chance to get to go to school where they pay you.
We use everything. Just try to be the waiting arms. I see them. Okay, it is question time. So I believe you've got mics on the sides. I can't see them, but we are open to questions. I see another waiting arm. Here we go. Mics are open.
Question.
I was just wondering what it would take to be on like one of your research teams. I mean, I'm not necessarily an artist, but I do a lot of reading and things like that.
Well, I think most of the research comes right out of the story departments that we have, story and art. It depends kind of what the season is, but we will usually just accumulate either certain key creative leads on the film, anyone that's out to kind of fish for information. So it's nothing really specific I can think of other than choosing the writers, directors, producer, and some of the story artists and sketch artists design in hopes of kind of filling the sketchbooks and photos and anything and everything about it. But there isn't really anything.
There's no real protocol to it that we use. We use all of our resources, like Andrew was talking about with your architect brother and this kind of stuff. You know, we use whatever the story requires in the moment, and so you kind of like, wow, you know, we've got to go to this place. We don't know anyone there. We start casting and then figuring it out. So it actually, we don't follow any specific plan.
There's a lot of technical experts that are involved in on a variety of topics as well, I would say. You know, regarding, you know, it could be botany or just it's never ending. You know, anthropologists.
I mean, that being said, we've never had like that guy in prison that can get you anything. And if you can be that person or find somebody that is that person, that would be awesome.
Let us know. Question?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. I was wondering what the relationship, or if there is a relationship between artistic license and doing your homework. Now, how do you set parameters after you've done your homework? You know, too much artistic license loses its authenticity. Too little, it's just a travel log. Thank you.
Good question. You just got to ride it. I mean, to be honest, at the end of the day, you're just trying to keep the audience engaged. And you just don't want something to throw them out of the picture and be distracted. But come on, it's like fish don't talk. So you have to, I know. So at some point, you just got to know you're taking it with a certain amount of license just coming to the movie to watch this. So our job is to make sure that you just aren't distracted by anything, and then if we can embrace the authenticity of it, we're always going to try to go for that first.
But nature is fascinating.
Well,
Finding out, like, in nature, these things can do this. So like, we try to do that as much as possible, and then
the goal is always to like try to do it with reality and try to do it with the rules. Right. But like for an example, like a Nemo, like we went to a sewage treatment plant. Like, okay, if a fish got into the plumbing, went to the sewage treatment plant, they were like, it would die. There's not a way, like we just kept trying, like any way that not a single way it will make it to the ocean.
Okay.
And we're like, okay, not gonna go with that. You know, at some point you just, you hope you've done enough job around things that are sometimes plot holes that make reality. And we have the same thing with, we get this question all the time, and believe me, we spent a year and a half arguing about this, was like, why does Buzz know to like freeze when everybody comes into the room when he doesn't think he's a toy? And we debated and debated and debated, and we went with this way and with that. Finally, we just said, you know what? Let's stop making the movie make you ask that question and move on, because we can't answer it. And so that's what we did. And, it's just, there are a lot of what we call refrigerator questions like that in movies, where like, hopefully we've got you all the way through the movie, you've gone home, and you're opening the refrigerator, you go, wait a minute. And if we can at least get it to
parts of making of Nemo and so forth. Trying to encourage my students to think out of the box and think about careers that they might be interested in computers or not, or whatever. Just briefly, if each of you could tell me how to tell them how you got involved in what you're doing. I'm also very excited there's 3 of you that are female up there, because my female students sometimes think they can't do things that the guys can do.
I guess I just always loved storytelling, and I love books, and it was just happenstance that I got into the film business. And I guess my advice is just I always did things that legitimately interested me. I didn't have any big grandiose plan. I would just sort of follow something that was interesting. I never did anything for the money. And I feel like I got really lucky falling into, I got lucky. I started at Industrial Light Management week Jurassic Park came out, which pretty much changed sort of computer graphics for film. So luck, hard work.
That's one of the things that we talked about yesterday. Remember at dinner, we were both saying how we were not the stars in our classes. Yeah. And there were always people that always seemed to have all the talent and get it better than we did. But we either lucked into or consciously finally realized like the one thing you can own is you can work harder than somebody else. And that nobody has a special part for it. You can, and what that does is you can't create when opportunities are going to come, but you can be ready when they do. And that's what working harder than everybody else does. And there's always something you can do, especially now. Geez, I'm so envious of my kids and like just the options they have to like follow any of their interests. There's not as many walls as there used to be. It used to be all about not being able to get to the equipment or the technology or the opportunities or the knowledge, and it's just all out there now.
Yeah, I started being fascinated by flip books and wanting to know more about animation. I couldn't find anything because there was no internet. Even I heard rumors of certain books that I couldn't find. It was really hard. But I think that was part of the fun. It's like when you finally do find that, and it forces you to kind of figure things out yourself. Curiosity, I think, is a huge deal.
But again, we all share kind of that work ethic because we're all lucky. I mean, Pixar was a very young company. We were all there, you guys especially from the early days, and it's a place that rewards passion. That's one thing that I was the same. I wanted to be an animator. I realized about the 5th grade that wasn't going to happen. I couldn't draw. I'm not a great artist, but I love it, and I learned everything I could about it. When I got to Pixar, very early days in Toy Story, I just told myself I'm going to work harder than anybody, anybody there. And I think we all share that.
Yeah, definitely the hard work. And I mean, I was not necessarily a fan of animation. I thought animation was fine, but I was more interested in technology. I was more interested in kind of the science of these movies and the technology and what the computer could do to entertain. But I was in film school and I was going to go for a master's degree because I thought this is so fascinating, And I had colleagues at school telling me, you should not waste your time on a master's degree. While you're wasting your time in school, I'm going to be working in the mailroom at the studio and I'll be a vice president at whatever studio by the time you finish school. And to some extent they were right, but I found, like Jonah said, a place that valued passion and valued, if you really care about something, you're going to work harder at it than you work at anything else. And Pixar was a place that wasn't sitting there looking at, who's in the mailroom. They were looking at who's really wrapped their head around this stuff and cares about it so much that they just have to be doing it. And I think we were fortunate to have found a place in beautiful Richmond, California at the time that cared about that and wanted those kinds of people. Good questions?
Okay, well actually, it's safe to have it. Well, 2 things. One, I never took a film class in my life. I still haven't. But I actually realized a lot of what I love. I was so impressed by people around me who I thought were so talented. And I went to liberal arts college and did diplomacy and world affairs, was the artist and everything. There's all this stuff I wish I could have done, but never could have. And so I kind of fell into working at feature animation, and I literally, I'm not even kidding you, sat in it all day long and pieces of paper. And there was those library, I don't know how those stamps with the ink and you had to roll the numbers to get the right thing, stamp the thing. So they did that, people don't even know if they still do, at Feature Animation, and my job was they handed me a stamp and a stamp pad, and I'd have to go through the X sheets, and they'd have hand drawings that would literally stack, and they'd come and drop them off, and each level of animation and effect was like in one piece of paper, and I'd have to sit there and check the thing, and then stamp the piece of paper, and move the paper on, and check off the list, and I did that for like 10 hours a day for 7 months straight. Like, all I was doing was stamping pieces, and literally it was like one of those weird, you start going crazy, wanting to stamp the middle of the drawing. Okay, I want to stamp the middle of Mulan's face. Can't get anymore. Why are there so many whales? And Fantasia, I was like, God! The Fantasia scenes would come in, and I was like, yeah. But, you know, and I never even thought that I would have the patience to do it or the desire to do it, but something about it, and it was like the education I got sitting in this cubicle watching this, but kind of all around me, this film getting made. But it was a surprise to me how much I loved it. I didn't see it coming. I don't know, I think as I described the job, my parents were like, can you go do something else with your college degree? And I didn't want to. I actually really, really ended up loving it. And then actually how I got into Pixar was watching this crazy, weird thing that they shot that you were shooting for Buzz Life.
Leaving on the wall.
Leaving on the wall in the mud. I watched that stupid tape.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need to go work with these people immediately.
Yes.
They know how to party.
They know how to party in the mud. And I ended up with Pixar. So I don't know. It's like, it's working hard and kind of taking a minute to realize what you're getting out of it, what the seemingly crazy making job is.
Go, sir.
I have a technical question for you. Carry it back.
We're ready. We're all very good. So now you're
Okay.
I'm curious what computer platform you work on and what program you use to render your animation. If it is a proprietary program, I'm doing pencil on paper right now. What can I buy? What can I use to go to the computer? You know, to take the place of paper and pencil.
We like pencil and paper. That comes pretty well.
We use a mix of stuff, proprietary and off-the-shelf stuff, but our animation software, we call it Presto, and it's built by us and for us, and we don't sell it, but we render on RenderMan, which is widely available at retailers
right
here.
downstairs.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know of any, what you can get over the counter for animation programs?
Oh yeah, they have that.
Purple out of box. Maya.
Is there, that's not cheap though, is it?
There's all sorts of stuff like After Effects, depending on what you want to do.
Yeah.
You know.
See great movies in Flash. You know, it is depending on what you want to do. You know, what your storytelling needs.
Photoshop has it.
Yeah. But we still render in RenderMan.
We're out of time, so this will be our last question.
Hello. Jonas, you mentioned that you finished the Route 66 trip with your wife.
Yes.
Have there been experiences where you wish your loved ones were with you, or experiences that you'd like to go back and do again with Route 66?
Yeah, I mean, the whole process of making these films, I mean, that was one for me. I mean, there's been so many, I met my wife at Pixar, so I've shared a lot with her. But we all, I think, going up and making these films together, yeah, the film becomes your family. And then the 66 one was really the one of the special ones for me. Another one on top that we didn't necessarily talk about was we actually went to, not really answering the question, but with my family, we ended up going to my grandparents' house and shooting, not telling them, but setting a video camera. We had some of the animators and us, and we brought sandwiches, and we just watched my grandpa move around. And he sat and then get up, and, you know, yeah, we just drowsy for some reason, and it just becomes like my family and these films have blurred together so much that there's a lot of special moments like that.
Actually, you know, Pixar's a pretty family-friendly place, and so I mean, we're all lucky enough to have our families come in as much as possible. I mean, Anne and I just had this crazy experience for another film where we got to meet an astronaut you're like, I never would have heard of that. So sometimes these 8-year-olds, like, they're so, our families or, our kids or whatever, the way that they think about things or ask questions or stuff, we get so caught up in like, even having them, come to visit us at work and showing them a little piece of animation or something sometimes their reaction to it or what gets them asked.
That's actually, I feel like half our job is to put ourselves back as an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
Try to approach the world of the problem as you did when you were a kid.
Because they're so much more open and curious and free with their reactions.
Yeah.
If they hate it, if they like it, if they think it's boring and all that kind of stuff, like they don't hide any of it. So it's like we actually use them.
Yeah, we met this kid in Scotland where I researched, and we met this like a 6-year-old kid, and he's very, very precocious, and he found out we were from Pixar, and he said, oh, did one of you work on The Incredibles? Yeah, we all, I just did. He's like, that's rubbish. But yeah, they totally, they see it, and he's like, all right, okay, we'll take your notes. I think the best you're hearing here is that, Pixar is family friendly, and it's also our family. I mean, I consider everybody, up here who I've known and worked with for years, like brothers and sisters, and it really is true. That line between personal and professional blurs so much when you're working so hard, working so many hours. And, the theme of today is research, and that's the thing. I mean, trips, no trips, whatever, I'd say the number one source of research is our family relationships. When you look at so many of our films, they have either a parent-child dynamic or a sibling dynamic or a friendship dynamic. We take that from our real lives. I mean, so many moments in the films are right from your last dinner table conversation or the thing that, your kid said to you or the thing that your parent used to say to you, or, like Andrew said, the mother-daughter relationship summit at Pixar. Well, people have some issues. Turns out everybody has mother-daughter issues. Turns out that we take it right from the families and our own relationships. So basically, we rip off everything that we're living and use it in the films.
Yeah.
So that's the way we can. You have been a fantastic audience. Thank you